You move quick.
They can keep drinking the formula, but on a basis of how many animals you have, if you at least put out a couple bowls full a day of the formula, and then the rest of the time they drink water, that's all you need to do.
You kind of alternate.
Yeah, because we've worked with the horse and we've worked with the small animals, and it's an impossibility because of the circumstances to be able to say, I'm going to give them formula and then I'm going to give them spring water,
Right.
because they're going to consume what they want. But if you, so if you do it and it works because we've seen the results from it. The allogel is incredible to think of the fact of all the bacteria and viruses and fungus that are in a barn. And the barn that Bill was talking about that was doing with the pool, they don't use anything on those horses except the gel. And I'm talking nicks, scrapes, bad injuries, everything. No infection. You couldn't be in a worse area than a barn to pick up all that. You know, and that's the only thing they're using.
So what's in the gel with the aloe vera? Is there a specific water, like the ones that we have mentioned, Break or any of those?
No, that's a specific formula that Terry has developed for us just to go into the gels. It's not like taking, say, Breaker and putting it in there. It's a specific one for that.
So the antibiotic properties or the antiseptic properties are unique to the gel?
No, because again, if you understand bacteria and viruses, they live at a lower frequency level. And because of that, if you can raise your frequency level, they can't live in that environment.
Okay, so we're not talking physical properties necessarily, but vibrational?
I can't say that as a fact, but that's the way I would interpret it,
Okay.
because we know that's what it does
And
in the
that's your
body.
experience with it?
Right, exactly. But again, the animal piece shows us so darn much, because it's not just a piece of the mentality of teaching them, as much as the environment that they live in, and they're showing us all these turnovers. The pool that Bill was talking about, the calves in that barn all go to drink from the pool now. They know there's not chemicals, and they wouldn't go near that thing before. There's a ramp that before you get into the pool for the horses, they go on the ramp and go down and drink. That's where they drink from now.
So they're showing the way.
Yeah.
I noticed that you have a powder or something there for animals too. What is that?
Powder?
No.
That white jar, what is that?
That's a gel.
That's the, oh, that's the
I
gel.
have, there's gels and creams.
Oh, okay.
Some are human, some are for
Ah.
animals. The other thing that I wanted to say in regards to animals, because their senses are so acute, if we really know our animals, as this gentleman knows his dog, and we study, if they come down with something, they're telling us there's something in the atmosphere that's causing this. Sometimes we don't know what it is. Let me give you an illustration. It's kind of simple. Our daughters are trainers now, but prior to that, when they were doing a lot of competition as young riders, we would every year go to certain horse shows. And this one particular horse show we went to, the unfortunate thing is they didn't have permanent stalls. They were stalled in a big, large tent, almost like a circus tent, and it was all partitioned off. They each had their own little partitioned little stall system. All of a sudden, we're there, and these horses, all the horses in the barn started acting up simultaneously. They're rearing their head. They want to get out of this stall. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? I bet less than 5 minutes later, a major storm came through. The point I'm trying to make is, they knew it. We didn't have a clue. It blew in that fast. So if we could get into their mind, and they could tell us what was wrong, we could probably, in many cases, heal ourselves quicker. Maybe even before we come in contact with these certain diseases. Any other questions? Yes.
You were talking about raising the frequency by using the gel from the frequency of disease or whatever. And I just, 2 days ago, I got an email about something called the Zapper. I wondered if you had heard about it. It's a device.
I sell zappers, yeah.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
It's a device that raises and lowers frequencies to match that of the disease, and then whatever it is, grows.
That's right. And
Okay, I'd like to know more about that. I just wondered if you had heard about this.
The only thing I can say from our experience of working with different things over here that builds this to this level, I feel this is the epitome of solving a lot of problems. We have learned from different things, whether it be essential oils or different nutrients and what have you, frequency, vibration, balance, your electrical, your body's electrical, physical energy. If you keep that energy up, you'll avoid a lot of disease.
The one thing you do have to understand, though, is there's a lot of mechanisms that work with frequency and energy. But the one thing that's very unique about this is the fact that it's very stable. In other words, it's the stability of what it can do that makes the difference, the consistency, the stability. Ryan, what are you going to add?
Another thing that I've seen through my own personal experience with my clients, there's a lot of frequency control devices like Rife machines and zappers that are very effective on bacteria and disease. As you get on these formulas, you will exceed a vibrancy higher than any machine ever made. And I've personally seen Rife machines and zappers screw people up that have already gone through a Perfect Science program because they're already at a higher frequency. They're getting exposed to Rife, which are great on bacteria and other stuff, but they're already above it, and it's pointing them down. And we've seen that both in the blood and in the ES technology. So just to know that as you're using these formulas, you are going to exceed the Rife technology and other frequency machinery.
Raphael's telling me we're running out of time, and your daughter has a question. So make your choice, Raphael.
I think it's time to move on.
I don't know if you want to relay the situation with your cat, and I don't know it specifically.
Sure, I'll share it, but I do want to move the proceedings ahead. I had a cat that was mauled very severely by something. Could have been a dog, but I have a feeling it was something wilder. She had a lacerated herniated spleen. Her hip was dislocated. They tried to put the hip back in, it wouldn't stay, they had to rebuild it. She had stitches all over, like lines of stitches all over the place. Bill and Joanne sent me some animal formulas. I started putting them on. The stitches all started to heal, except there was an area that still had fluid in, so they went back in. She went through like 3 major surgeries. The last time they did surgery on her, they discovered that her knee, in the process of replacing her hip and during the surgery, the knee was kind of, it couldn't bend. The ligaments were kind of like stuck. And they said, this was, I'll say 3 days ago, but they told me this the last time I went, she came out of the surgery, they discovered that the knee had been damaged. I started by that time I got the waters, the external water, the internal water, and the gels. I started putting the gels on her knee, on her hip, and over all of the stitches. 3 days later, they said, look, you've got to do physical therapy. You've got to actually walk her with a towel underneath of her and get her back legs moving. Otherwise, we are going to have to amputate that leg. 3 days later, Grace saw her walking. When I took her to the vet 5 days later, or whatever it was, and I had her on this bench, about the higher than the table, she wanted to jump off. She actually almost did. And I put her down on the ground. I said, hey, come have a look. She started walking in front of the vet. They were blown away. And now she can jump up on the sofa. She jumps up on the bed. She can jump down much easier. She can't bend and jump up to get her food on the counter. That's the next step. But basically, she goes outside now. She's walking around the house.
What formula did you use?
The animal formulas that they sent me. The gel, the internal, and the external. I'd spray every time she'd get up there. I'd go and spray her with the external formula, and she'd, after a few minutes, she'd get up and walk because she didn't want to be bombarded. And when I could, I'd put the gel. I actually went through one of those gels on her pretty much. I'd put it on her ears, I'd put it on her paws, and I'd put it on the wound itself. So thank you very much, Bill. I wanted to.
What I can do is by offering some personal observations, hands-on experience for a number of years.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Use your big bear voice.
About 7 years ago, I came into a circumstance where I came into contact with a massive amount of heavy metal toxins and pesticides. They were absorbed into my skin real bad. Within 4 hours, I knew I was in really bad trouble. Within 6 hours, I was in an emergency room in my community and stayed in intensive care for the next 7 days. At one time, I underwent every test imaginable that was available at that time in that community, which were many. And it was determined that my liver was shutting down at a rate that was almost unheard of. My hair began to fall out. I began shedding body weight. I usually carry about 205 pounds. Over the course of the next 30 days, I dropped to 163 pounds. There are lesions on my skin, eruptions. My lower extremities were beyond belief. I mean, I couldn't even be touched. I was in so much pain constantly. And then from the liver deterioration rate, they've given me approximately 60 to 65 days to live. The doctors, they pretty much had written me off. Yet one made an attempt to set me up with a bed at the Toxicology Research Center at Stanford Medical Hospital in the Bay Area. And arrangements were made for me to be transported there and receive treatment. In prior circumstances, I had an amazing flow of synchronicity. I came into contact with an amazing man whom I had never met. He was just a voice on the telephone I periodically had contact with. When he had learned my circumstances, he merely told me, "Get your ass up here. If you go down south, you're going to die." And he was right. I was going to die, and I knew it. And so I chose the unknown and jumped off into it. It was an incredible journey. It lasted several days. Amazing things along the way. I mean, just amazing. I won't bore you with them. But I found myself standing in front of this grizzled little old man about this big. And he's staring up at me going, "You're years late. We've got much to do." And that was the beginning of a remarkable experience that leads up to this point in time now. At the time, he was working with some materials that since have been termed high spin. High spin. There's a wealth of information on the internet involving high spin, monatomic. That's modern terminology for things that are ancient. The understanding is ancient. But at that point in time, he was coming at this from a metallurgical standpoint, which required tremendous amounts of equipment and such, and I was to be his guinea pig, which I was more than happy to be such. First 30 days were nip and tuck. It was bad. I mean, I literally slept and ate weird foods that I had no desire to eat, yet I had these cravings that were beyond belief. And this is, I literally at 2 points did fall asleep face first in playful food. But I did better. The hair loss stopped while I still had a few left. The lesions gradually got less and less and less. And it was all because of this remarkable material that came out of just an amazing process, which is termed M3. After the 30-day point, I mean, it was obvious there was a turnaround. It was amazing. I began getting my muscle tone back, started putting on a little bit of weight. The sleep wasn't so strenuous. He put me on a work program that was pretty extensive. It was crushing ore by hand. Well, I was looking at a machine that could have done it for me, but it worked. Started putting on muscle mass, body tissue. Continued with the materials, the M3. During all that time, I began working with him on many, many, many things and found him to be incredibly remarkable in many, many ways. But what evolved from there? Many things. First of which, I regained my health fully. I mean, I stand before you today 7 years ago when the doctors had given me 60 days and they meant it. And they just washed their hands. It took probably 6 months to gain back all the weight that I had lost. As you can see, I have a head full of hair and a face full too. I'm in pretty darn good shape, although my diet is atrocious. And I like it that way. I smoke like a fiend. I drink 2 gallons of coffee each and every day. Little or no sleep. Yeah. I mean, specifically, that's pretty much how it is. And, yeah. But the point is over the course of time, I came to learn some incredible things, both about myself and about the elements around us. These materials, they're everywhere. All living things contain high spin elements. All of them. There's nothing. You can go out there and drag in a tree, and in a few short hours I can show you, but for your eyes, that this is so. There's huge deposits of these materials all over the western United States, probably all over the world. I've traveled to 6 different places that the Native Americans were fully aware of as being